So let me get this straight. 2 weeks ago, millions of people in Spain were plunged into total darkness, total blackout, no power, no lights, no communication. People couldn't get their money out of their bank accounts. Traffic lights were off. It was chaos because of their ridiculous, solar and wind-based energy grid that totally collapsed. Well, now the EU has a solution to prevent that from happening again. Double down on green energy and spend 600 billion euros to unify the green energy grid. And that's just the starting point, 600 billion euro, okay? Yes, the European Union just unveiled their shiny new grid action plan, is what they're calling it, which reads to me like a half-baked energy fantasy that comes with a price tag of nearly $1 trillion once you factor in long-term goals of this thing. You know, they always tell you like a nice like lower number. Add on another 400 billion euros to that ticket. They're telling us 600 billion euros, but it really stretches over $1 trillion. They want to unify and then modernize the entire electrical grid across Europe to prepare for a green energy future, not a carbon-based fossil future. More of the same green energy future that caused the grid to collapse in the first place.
Which means if you're a Europhile and you think Europe is beautiful, and it is, then you're on board with ripping up land and putting solar and wind there, because the amount of land you need for sustainables, for renewables, whatever, is upwards of 30 to 40% of the land you've got now. Now, in the United States, we are able to power our entire country by using less than 1% of the land we've got goes to power plants, coal plants, what have you. But if you want to rip up your countryside for wind and solar, none of which are made in any kind of ecological way. They're not recyclable. They use a ton of water to make. You want to do that. Okay, you're not doing the math then. But if you want to do that, okay. You know, when you go and visit the Swiss Alps or whatever, I hope you don't want to see mountains or anything like that. You better just want to see windmills, solar farms, right?
Mm-hmm. So just as a reminder of what happened 2 weeks ago, the largest blackout in Europe's history hit Portugal and Spain after there were major fluctuations in solar and wind energy. So yeah, like Natalie's point, you want to just drive through the beautiful countryside of Portugal and just see them filled with these ugly ass windmills that don't work, that are like not even on and running.
They need fuel to run as well.
Yeah. And then they also can't recycle the damn things, because we talked about that, right? You take the giant, what do you call them? Not turbines, but the wind, whatever the things that stick out of a windmill. Not
I think it is a turbine,
because the turbine is the blade. Spin the blades. Oh. That's what I'm thinking of. They don't have a way to recycle them, so they just like pile them in landfills. So anyway, they have these major fluctuations in solar and wind energy caused this huge blackout. They told us it was due to atmospheric anomalies. I'm sure it had nothing to do with the fact that the wind and solar are so wildly inconsistent that grid spikes and plummets caused an outage. But they're still not telling us the cause. They're still blaming it on atmospheric anomalies. Even this morning, the New Republic just posted this. Still no explanation for that blackout in Spain and Portugal. Huh. Authorities in both countries say they still don't know why the power failed, which is A, not reassuring, and B, going to spur suspicious minds to conclude that authorities secretly do know why the power failed, but they don't want to tell them. Those immediate insistent arguments that the blackout had nothing to do with reliance on renewable energy certainly seem to be driven more by political and reputational concerns than a thorough examination of the evidence.
Well, my experience with those governments is that you don't get straight answers. So to expect one is foolhardy.
Oh, you're not going to. Yeah, right. But there were news organizations, though, in the days after that started to peel this onion back. Like, for instance, and pointing the finger at solar and wind. Spain and Portugal blackout blamed on solar power dependency. Electricity experts point to dangers of grid instability when renewables dominate the output. So they had to go around government officials, talk to electricity experts in all of it. But oddly, the Spanish political leaders, as of today, who have really pushed for the expansion of green energy in the region. We're talking both the prime minister and the environmental minister of Spain have flat out rejected that the green energy policies caused this blackout, saying wind and solar had nothing to do with the problem. That's strange. They're really trying to convince you that it was just some sort of weird atmospheric anomaly. This all feels so strange, right? 1 week after the biggest blackout in Europe's history, they suddenly have $1 trillion plan ready to go to modernize the electric grid to handle advancements in green energy production. The timing is very curious. It's almost like a false flag, isn't it?
They do not have €1 trillion for this.
Yeah, where are you going to get the money for this?
They don't have it. Nope, they're in debt. They don't have that. They have, what they will get is permission for the EU to borrow it. Put it on credit.
Ask the Portuguese people. I mean, they're so stinking rich. The Portuguese, like when they go to bed at night, they just swim in gallons of money. Mm-hmm. So just ask them. I'm sure they'd be willing to give up their money. Or, like the rural farmers in Spain. They have so much money that they sleep on piles of euros every night instead of hay beds or Tempur-Pedics. They're so wealthy right now. Just ask them for this money. So they've already right after all this happened, they shut, and of course they just shut down these nuclear power plants, the most reliable zero emission energy source known to man, destroyed them, shut them down, not even just turn them off, like we're going to just destroy them. So it'll take us years to rebuild them if somebody else wants to do that. So these things, of course, can't function. The wind turbines, the solar goes out when the sun's not shining. If a cloud moves over these solar panels, it immediately sees a huge dip in its energy production. When that system fails, the answer isn't to go back to what works, like nuclear. No, we already destroyed all of those things. So no, instead, we're going to throw $1 trillion into the pit and then hope for the best. To my mind, this is like the green energy scam. It's a green energy scam, pure and simple, just like what AOC is pushing for in the United States. They call it the RE-Power EU initiative. They should call it the RE-Poor EU initiative because that's what's coming. Also, they just announced they're going to spend, another $800 billion on militarization throughout Europe so they can go to war with Russia.
No. They did not say they will spend it. They said they're giving themselves permission to borrow it.
Okay.
That's very different. They keep saying we are going to spend all this money on our values.
Yeah, we don't even have the money.
Such as an increased military or green energy. But they don't have it. What they're doing is going into their, incorporation documents basically and saying, we're going to raise the debt limit. So, they're doing this without telling the European populace. At least in the United States, we get to argue about the debt ceiling.
Yeah.
Even as we, continue to cruise right past it. Europeans don't get a say. Their leaders are just doing it.
I mean, it's unbelievable. The European Commission's own documents admit that 40% of Europe's power transmission lines are over 40 years old. And instead of fixing them with proven technology like nuclear, hydroelectric, geothermal, they want to expand wind farms all across Europe and tear down all the farmland because they hate farmers, right? They absolutely hate farmers. So get rid of all the farmland so you can't eat. They want you to eat, whatever, their Impossible burgers. Replace it with solar farms, wind farms, and you will be happy. That's Europe. That's their green scam. Don't fall for it. It sounds like a new Green Deal false flag to me. It's so convenient. 1 week after the grid collapses, they're like, you know what? We need to spend $1 trillion and modernize this thing because you don't want to happen what happened the other day when you couldn't get your cash out of your ATM, right? When you couldn't turn on your lights, you couldn't power your refrigerator. So we need to make this investment,
But that's the thing about the EU. You don't have any choice, even if you don't fall for it, because they're going to do it anyway, because there's a government behind your government. So as a Portuguese, you can tell your own government, we don't like this, but the European Union's going to make them do it anyway.
Yeah.
So you cannot fall for it, but they're still going to do it.
It'd be as if I bought a brand of car that consistently breaks down. And so my solution is to buy another one of the same brand so that when the one breaks down, I still have the other one. Like that is not wise policy.
A backup.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keep buying the same crappy car over and over again.
As a backup.
Yeah.
Yep. That's exactly right. That's a good analogy.